again coming to his people. And so with great signs, with wonders, with the words of the prophets, he reveals again and again his plan. And his plan is that isolation, that hiding caused by sin would not be the final answer. That darkness caused by sin would not be permanent, but rather he would send a Savior. He would join himself to us. The incarnation, God taking on our human flesh in the person of Jesus Christ. When the incarnation happens, God approaches his people in a radically new way. He approaches his people, he comes to them, he unites himself to them, to us. None of us does this alone. But neither does God do this alone. Now, part of the reason that I read the long form of the gospel tonight was I wanted to impress you with my ability to say complicated biblical names twice in a row. I just wanted to flex a little bit, okay? But the more important reason, 14 generations, 14 generations, 14 generations. We see all these generations and how in each and every generation, God is revealing himself to his people. In each generation, these figures who we read about in the gospel, they have a story in the Old Testament. Each of these figures is part of God's instrumentation, part of his plan. And so go back and read the story of some of these figures, and you will find that through them, God began to reveal his plan for salvation. And in revealing his plan for salvation, he was showing us that there would be a Savior who would come. But God would do this work, not alone, but with and through his creation, his fallen people. And so salvation comes to us because successive generations cooperated with God's plan. Now, they didn't always do it perfectly, just as you and I do not follow God's plan perfectly. But God desired to work with his fallen humanity. He desired to work with his creation. And so, in working with his creation, in loving his creation, he would bring them back. He would restore them. He would build them up again. None of us does this alone. We've learned very well in this year that we don't get through all of this and all of this craziness by ourselves. In fact, the more isolated we are, the lonelier we are, the more prone to sin and to struggle we are. And so Christmas rolls around to remind us that we should not be alone. Christmas comes around to remind us that God has come to his people. God has come to his people through his people. Through these successive generations, God has joined himself to us. And so Joseph, uncertain about what to do, uncertain and afraid, very much as our world right now feels uncertain and afraid. Joseph thinks he has made a decision. God comes to him. The angel appears to him in the dream and speaks to him, reminds him of who this child to be born really is. This is not something to be afraid of. Rather, this is a great gift, a great blessing. This child who is to be born is Emmanuel, which means God is with us. God is with us. In this time that we felt so isolated and alone and been reminded that we cannot get through it by ourselves, that rather we need a community, we need a family, we need friends,